The Nagayama incident and the question of the death penalty. In 1968, as Japan was swept up in the fervor of rapid economic growth, a series of widespread murders suddenly erupted. This would later become an exceptionally unique case in post-war judicial history, raising fundamental questions about the perpetrator's background, the trial proceedings, and the very nature of the death penalty. The culprit was Norio Nagayama, only 19 years old at the time. In just 1 month, he took 4 lives using a handgun, shocking the nation. A month in the darkness, the spate of serial shootings. The first incident occurred in the early hours of October 11, 1968, in Tokyo's Minato ward. Around 12:50 a.m., Norio Nagayama fired at close range at Kenki Nakamura 27, a security guard at the Tokyo Prince Hotel. Mr. Nakamura was taken to the hospital but died approximately 10 hours later. Just 3 days later, in the early morning of October 14, the violence shifted to Kyoto. Inside the grounds of the Yasaka Shrine, Nagayama again opened fire on night watchman Torijiro Katsumi 69. Mr. Katsumi died about 3.5 hours later. Forensic analysis by the National Police Agency confirmed that the bullets from both incidents were fired from the same American-made .22 caliber revolver. The crime scenes shared similarities, both were quiet, secluded locations, and the crimes occurred late at night. Crucially, the targets in both cases were security guards. The National Police Agency designated this as Widespread Important Incident No. 108 and launched a large-scale nationwide investigation. Initial evidence suggested the culprit might be connected to a U.S. military base in Japan. However, the perpetrator, Norio Nagayama, had already boarded the Seikan ferry, heading toward his birthplace in Abashiri, Hokkaido. He later noted in a memo that he had intended to take his own life in his hometown. While wandering through Hokkaido, Nagayama wrote a poignant note. Even having committed the worst crime, I decided to live, at least with the money I never had, for the remaining days of my life. This showed that a sense of despair and a destructive motive against society had solidified within Nagayama. On October 26, the violence reached Hokkaido's Hakodate area. Inside a taxi on the road in Nani town, Nagayama shot and killed the driver, Tetsuhiko Saito 31, and stole approximately 9,000 yen. Mr. Saito died the following day. Approximately 10 days later, in the early hours of November 5, the final incident occurred in Nagoya. Inside a taxi in Nagoya's Minato ward, Nagayama fired upon the driver, Masaaki Ito 22, robbing him of 7,420 yen and a watch. Mr. Ito died about 5 hours later. In this manner, Nagayama took 4 precious lives, plunging Japan into fear. Arrest and the revelation of a tragic upbringing. To prevent a 5th crime and apprehend the culprit of incident number 108, the police mobilized over 8,000 officers, imposing strict security at hotels and entertainment districts across Tokyo. Taxi drivers often refused to pick up solitary male passengers late at night, significantly impacting social life. Norio Nagayama began working as a bartender trainee and coffee shop waiter in Shinjuku, Tokyo. However, in the early morning of April 7, 1969, driven by the need for money, he broke into an office. Confronted by a security guard, Mr. Nakaya, they struggled, and Nagayama fired a shot which grazed Mr. Nakaya's cheek before fleeing. Shortly after this Harajuku incident, he was spotted by patrolling officers as a suspicious young man in a bluish jumper and jeans. Around 5 a.m., in Kitasanto, Shibuya ward, he was apprehended as an in flagranti criminal. The pistol was found hidden near his chest. During the subsequent investigation and trial, Norio Nagayama's tragic upbringing came to light. Born in 1949, he was the 7th of 8 children, in an extremely poor farming family in a remote area of Abashiri, Hokkaido. His father gambled away the family's assets and deserted them. His mother left later to make a living, leaving young Norio and 3 of his siblings behind in Abashiri. At age 5, Nagayama reportedly ran after the departing train, crying out to his mother. Later, he was taken to live with his mother in Aomori, but the extreme poverty continued. Without a television, his only joy was using movie passes, earned from a newspaper route, to watch films, particularly The Great Escape. In junior high, he faced bullying due to his poverty, leading to repeated truancy and abuse from his older siblings. He ultimately received a certified graduation due to insufficient attendance. At 15, he moved to Tokyo as one of the golden eggs, a term for junior high graduates sought by companies during the economic boom. However, his intense loneliness and inability to adapt socially led to a cycle of workplace troubles and resignations. His anguish was compounded when he discovered his family register listed his birthplace as Abashiri Yabito Mura Bangaichi, Abashiri Yabito Village, out of area number, fearing he would be mocked as being born in prison, due to the popular prison film series, Abashiri Bangaichi. Due to the extreme environment of poverty and family abandonment, Nagayama failed to develop social empathy and planning skills, leading to an impulsive and self-centered personality. Prison study and the tears of ignorance. Once imprisoned, Nagayama declared, "I'm going to be executed anyway," but simultaneously began to voraciously read philosophical and ideological works, including Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov, Marx's Das Kapital, and Kant. He then wrote for the first time, recording his questions to society and his own life story in notebooks. This work was later published as Mochi no Namaida, Tears of Ignorance, which became a bestseller and shocked Japanese society by exposing the deep flaws in his upbringing. He sent all the royalties to the victims' families, hoping to offer, at least some form of atonement. During his trial, Nagayama argued that his crimes were a result of the ignorance brought about by poverty. "The man standing here, who killed 4 people, what do you think of him? Everything is because I was poor. That is what I hate. I hated it, so I did it." He astonished the court by reciting in English a passage from Bonger's book, Criminality and Economic Conditions, claiming that poverty destroys social sentiment and relationships between people. The death sentence and the birth of the Nagayama Standard. On July 10, 1979, the Tokyo District Court handed down the death sentence, as requested by the prosecution, citing the gravity of taking 4 lives and the cold-blooded nature of the crimes. However, the state-appointed defense attorney appealed, arguing that the court should look beyond the outcome of the acts and consider the social background that produced the crime. On August 21, 1981, the Tokyo High Court made an extraordinary decision, overturning the initial sentence and imposing life imprisonment. The reasoning stated that while Nagayama was legally an adult at 19, he had been raised in an extremely poor environment, and in terms of psychological maturity, he could be regarded as being in a state similar to a minor under 18. His repentance in prison and his donation of royalties were also taken into consideration. In response, the Tokyo High Public Prosecutor's Office made an unprecedented appeal to the Supreme Court, arguing that the reduction to life imprisonment constituted a violation of precedent, seeking a sentence equivalent to death. Then, on July 8, 1983, the Supreme Court overturned the High Court's life sentence and remanded the case back for further careful deliberation. At the same time, the Supreme Court established 9 historical criteria for applying the death penalty. These criteria are now commonly known as the Nagayama Standard, a critical guideline for death penalty application in Japan thereafter. Key points of the Nagayama Standard. 1. The guilt of the crime. 2. Motive for the crime. 3. The nature of the crime, particularly the persistence and brutality of the method of killing. 4. The severity of the consequences, especially the number of victims. 5. Feelings of victimization from bereaved families. 6. Social impact. 7. The perpetrator's age. 8. Criminal record. 9. Circumstances after the crime. The standard emphasized the number of victims in particular, marking the Nagayama incident as a major turning point in the history of Japanese justice. Final years and legacy. In the remand trial, Nagayama continued to fight alongside defense attorney Makoto Endo, a death penalty abolitionist, stating, "I am here because the capitalist society creates poor people." Nagayama gained recognition as an author, publishing novels like Kihashi Wooden Bridge from prison and winning the New Japanese Literature Prize. However, on April 17, 1990, the Supreme Court dismissed the final appeal. Norio Nagayama's death sentence was finalized. 7 years after his sentence was finalized, on August 1, 1997, Norio Nagayama was executed at the Tokyo detention house at the age of 48. Nagayama had left a will requesting that his royalties be used for poor children in Peru. Following his execution, the Nagayama Children's Fund was established. The Nagayama incident is remembered not only as a series of terrible acts but as a historical case that forced the judiciary and society to confront the fundamental question of the death penalty: should those who kill pay with their lives, or should they be given a chance at rehabilitation?